Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to keep working on this participation activity we have. So I'm using Office 365, and where we left off, we had just done this times table, multiplication table, but the key to that was using mixed cell references. And if you just kind of blindly followed along with that, go back and really do it and work ahead of me so that you're writing these formulas properly. I really want you to know when and why to use a mixed cell reference versus a completely relative cell reference versus a completely absolute cell reference. So make sure you're practicing that, because you're going to see those skills pop up in quizzes and assignments and things like that. And it's not that it's tough, and it's not like you couldn't look it up in just a matter of minutes, but there's a number of situations where I want you to be able to perform a skill in Excel in a matter of seconds. I don't want a 4-second skill to end up taking you 4 minutes to go to research it and do that kind of stuff. So, and the only way to get fast at that is to obviously do it multiple times. So let's get into some new things here. I've already got a couple sheets created. I'm going to work on sheet 3 now. If you don't have sheet 3, click the little plus, create a new sheet. I'm going to go to sheet 3, right click on sheet 3, rename, and I'm going to call this functions. And to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to zoom in 200%. I'm using the zoom controls in the lower right corner. You can't see that because I think my little camera inset is there, but it's 200% just to make that nice and big and easy to see. Now, a function in Excel is simply a formula that's been kind of pre-programmed in to make it easier for us to write. And I'll give you a really quick example. So let's say we've got some numbers here, and I'll just pick on column D. And in D1, I'm going to go ahead and put in a series of 3-digit numbers. So I've got several 3-digit numbers in this range, which is, of course, D1 through D6. And my first question is, all right, well, what's the total of this? Now, using just basic formulas, we did some multiplication formulas on the previous worksheet. I might say, okay, no problem. I can simply do equals, click on that first cell, D1, plus the next cell, plus D3, plus D4, plus D5, plus D6. And that's not wrong. It's actually very, very correct. And when I press enter, I'm going to get the sum of those cells, those cell values. However, you can obviously, it doesn't seem like a very efficient way to write this. And I only had 6 numbers. What if I had 60 numbers? You're not telling me you would actually write out a formula of just adding up 60 different cells. Once again, I said this in the last video, if you ever catch yourself doing something repetitive that seems inefficient in Excel, you need to know that there is a better way. You may not know what that better way is, but you need to acknowledge that there probably is a better way. And that's what you want to research. That's what you want to ask me about. Say, Ralph, I'm doing this. This can't be the way it's meant to be because it just seems slow and inefficient, tedious, repetitive, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do another total over here in D8, but this time I'm going to use a function equals the name of the function and then an opening parentheses, and then I can use my mouse and I can click and drag the range of cells in question, D1 through D6, closing parentheses. All functions have the same basic syntax. It's an equal sign, and then the name of the function, and then a set of parentheses. And then some functions have an empty set of parentheses. Most functions have multiple arguments within those parentheses or parameters. For instance, right now I'm using one argument in my sum function. I know it seems like multiples, but there's only one in there, D1 in the range D1 through D6. Now I could do more though. Check this out. I could put after that range, comma, D7. Now that's not an appropriate function because I'm adding up the 6 values plus I'm adding in the sum of those 6 values. But in a function, when you start to put a comma, that's when you're separating multiple arguments. So now I'm using a function with multiple arguments. However, since that's not an appropriate one to use, I'll take that out and we'll use multiple arguments in a little bit. Okay, so that's a pretty good way to go and pretty efficient. Now, of course, I also could have done this with multiple arguments. Equals sum parentheses, the first cell, comma, next cell, comma. And of course, you're already seeing this is not a very efficient way to write a function, especially for cells that are all next to each other. Nobody would ever want to do it that way. But at least now it is multiple arguments. So I've got 6 arguments in that function. We can tell because they're separated by commas, but obviously not the best way to go. And of course, all of these are working. All of these are accurate. So in a quiz or a test environment, I probably, unless I told you specifically to use a sum function, I probably wouldn't take off any points if you did one of these slow and inefficient methods. However, quizzes are timed, tests are timed, and if your goal is to work through things quickly and efficiently, as it should be, then you're going to want to know the fastest way you can do that. Now, in all of these examples, I wrote out the sum function. However, let's do this again. Total. This time, I'm not even going to type out the sum function. I'm on my home ribbon, and all the way over here on the far right, there's an auto sum button. There's actually a drop down for all the other options on there, but it defaults to sum. I can just click that once, and Excel is going to start the function for me. Now, it doesn't know what I want to add up, so I have to help it out. I'm going to select that range of cells, D1 through D6. It looks pretty good. It's already got the closing parentheses. Now I can just press my Enter key, and there we go. So it's even faster that way. But I can also do this. I'm gonna fix this first one that I did. Watch this. I can select this range of cells, including the empty cell beneath that range. Just click my auto sum, and it just pops it right in there for me. And if I double click to edit that, I can see it's got the sum function, D1 through D6. The sum function is probably the function most people will use the most. So it becomes super easy to use. And does it matter if you click the sum button? Nope. Does it matter if you type it out? No. If you're fast on the keyboard, typing it out is really not that much slower. So as you learn the functions, some of them you might just type out. Now let's do a few other things over here. Let's figure out what is the median. All right, actually, before we do median, let's do average because that's pretty common. What's the average of all of these numbers? Well, for that, I can activate the cell where my average is going to go. I go to my auto sum button, but this time I'm going to click the drop down. I'm going to choose average. I'm going to select the range of cells that I want to average. It's already got the closing parentheses, so I can just press enter. And there we go. So I can see the average of all of these is 555. What's the median of all of those? The median is if we were to arrange these numbers from smallest to largest and literally pick the one in the middle. Now, since I have 6 numbers, there wouldn't technically be a number in the middle, so we would actually average in the 2 middle numbers, whatever they happen to be. So let's see what the median might be. Now, for the median function, I don't have that as an option. I could go to more functions and find it, but I don't want you to have to rely on that. Once you start to understand that functions have a syntax, a method, name of the function, parentheses, and then the cells or the arguments in question. There's my sum function. There's my average function. So based on how the sum function looks and the average function looks, you should have a pretty darn good guess on how the median function looks, even if you have no clue on what a median is. Equals median, opening parentheses, select the range of cells, closing parentheses, enter. Now this is pretty weird. It's unusual that the median and the average will come out the same, but in this example they have. And that's because I picked a pretty weird little syntax for my numbers. But let's see if we can't mess these up a little bit. So I live in Bend, which is obviously real estate is crazy here. And when they talk about the average house price, they usually talk about the median house price as opposed to the average house price. Median is sometimes a better number to indicate because you'll get some, you get like Drew Bledsoe coming in and they'll buy like a $4 million house and And that can really throw off the average, and it might be a little bit misleading. So what happens to that there is I can pick on a number. Say I've got this really big number, 987. I'm going to change that to 3,000. So it's a really big number out of my little series. And changing that number had a big impact on the average, but it did not have an impact on the median. And that's why median can sometimes be a little bit more of an honest way. What's the median household price in Bend? What's the average, or what's the median salary for this kind of job, and that kind of stuff. So median can sometimes give you that extra piece of information that's a little bit more valid without the extremes impacting it, because obviously the extremes the other way can impact it as well. So I've got this low number of 321 right there. I could make that a 2, and of course that also impacts the average, but my median is still the same. Now medians can certainly get impacted if you start to change multiple numbers in the series, or if you increase the number in the series or decrease the number. Median can be impacted. It just tends to be a little bit more stable. Okay, so sum, average, median. Let's try count. Let's see what that does. So I saw that in my auto sum option, count numbers, cool. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to select the cells in question, D1 through D6, and there are 6 numbers. Great. So those functions work pretty well. There's also, oops, I didn't want to do that there. I just want to write max because I saw that function, equals max. What's the maximum number out of all of this series? It's going to be easy for us to guess. 3,000, but if that was 300, now the max is 789. There it is. Oh, and finally my median got affected too. So using these basic functions is actually pretty easy. You can start to guess at what those functions might be. Now the other thing we can do is we can combine functions. But I'm going to combine multiple functions together. So check this out. Let's try to reproduce an average real quick. I'm going to say equals the sum of D1 through D6 divided by the count of D1 through D6. So I'm combining functions into a formula. The division part is just a basic formula. So I'm summing those numbers and I'm dividing them by the count of those numbers. And I'm sure most of you realize, well, that's just producing the average. And there's my average. My average is 387.333, 387.333. Great, so that's my average, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. Let's say I want to average these numbers, but I don't want to count the lowest number, and I don't know what the lowest number is, so I can say I'm going to sum up those numbers, but I'm also going to subtract, well, the minimum of those numbers. Now, because of the order of operations, this is not completely done. And by the way, if you press enter too soon, just double click on that function or that cell and you'll go back into edit mode. What I want to do is I'm going to use some parentheses here in order to force the order of operations. I want this subtraction part of the formula to occur before the division part of the formula. So basically, I'm taking the sum of those 6 numbers and I'm subtracting the smallest number, happens to be 2 at the moment, and I'm dividing it by the count. However, that's not completely accurate either, because if I'm subtracting the smallest number, I should really only be averaging by these others, because it's going to give me kind of an artificial average. So I'm going to take my count and I'm going to put parentheses around that part of the formula, and I'm going to subtract 1. So I'm taking the sum of all of my numbers minus the smallest of the numbers, and I'm dividing it by the count of all the numbers minus 1. Since I have 6, I'm really going to be dividing by 5. Now I'm going to press enter. Now we are going to get a number that's a little bit different here because the number 2 is no longer factored in to my average. So if I were to make this a more reasonable number, 4-digit number there, now the average of all of them is going to be a little bit closer to my average dropping the lowest, because now my average is dropping this 123, which is the lowest out of that series. So And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a technique we can use in order to combine multiple functions, but this is also what some teachers might use in order to calculate grades. Sometimes they'll drop a lowest quiz grade or drop the lowest assignment grade or something like that. Oops, now I clicked on the wrong thing by accident, so I'm going to press my escape key to get out of that. So if you start to make a mistake in a function or a formula, you can press the escape key just kind of to back out without pressing the enter key. Okay, so that's what's going on there. We can combine multiple functions together and do some formulas. Let's try something else here. On the other worksheet, in fact, I'll jump back over to text and number formatting. I calculated my age in days the other day. Now I'm going to calculate my age in years. It's going to be pretty easy. Equals my age in days divided by the number of days per year. Excuse me. I'm going to do 365.25 to account for leap year. Every 4 years we have that extra day, so I'm going to do 365.25, and so that's an accurate way. I can just do a simple formula using a cell reference to get some new piece of information. Okay, now I could have made this a little bit more complicated though, right? What if I didn't have this data up here? What if I instead said, okay, I'm going to put in equals today's date minus a specific date. Now I'm using the date function and it's asking for 3 arguments. It's asking for year, month, and day. My birth year was 1973, comma 5 for the month, comma 21 for the day. So that's, once again, functions mixed with formulas. I'm taking the today function, which has no arguments, minus the date function, which has several arguments. That, of course, produces my age in days. Now these are coming off a little bit different, and that's because I think this is what it was yesterday. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, oh, I typed it in by hand. So I typed that date in by hand of February 2nd, but I'm recording this video on February 3rd. So if I wanted this to always be live, what I could do is instead of typing in a date which I wanted to be today's date, I could have just put in the today function right in that cell, and that would always have today's date, and then age and days would be accurate, and there we go. However, I'm not done with this function. This is my age in days. So if I enclose this whole thing in parentheses, don't forget I'm using parentheses to alter the order of operations, divide it by 365.25. Now everything is contained in this one cell using a combination of Excel functions and some simple math formulas. Cool. So back over to functions. I think we're doing pretty good here. I definitely want you to be able to sum, average, max, and min given a set of numbers. So on your sheet, that's really all I'm asking is that you've got some basic use of functions so that I can see that you've done these, you've at least tried them a little bit. Last but not least, I want to do some conditional formatting. And you know what? I think I'm going to do that right here. Conditional formatting is pretty cool. It allows us to look at a range of cell contents, often numbers, but not always, and we can format the cells based on a condition or two. So I'm going to select this group of 6 numbers, and I'm looking at my home ribbon, and I see there's this drop down for conditional formatting. There's a bunch of options on here. I'm going to start with the top. Highlight cells rules that are greater than. I'm going to highlight cells that are greater than 500. Excuse me. So I'm just typing in a 500 there, and I'm going to format them with green fill and dark green text. I'll click OK. And then when I click away, you can see, all right, numbers that are greater than 500 have that highlighting. I'm going to select that range again. Conditional formatting, highlight cells rules that are less than 500, and that's going to get a light red fill with dark red text. And there we go. So I've got numbers that are less than 500 and numbers that are greater than 500. What if I had a number that was exactly 500? Well, if I change one of these to 500, it doesn't get any formatting because my conditional formatting rules are only looking at cells that are greater than 500 or less than 500. If they're exactly 500, they don't get accounted for. So I'm going to select this range of cells, conditional formatting. I'm going to highlight cells rules that are equal to 500, and I'm going to change those to, you know what? I don't like any of those choices. However, this is interesting. On Excel 2019, I get an option to customize exactly what I want the formatting to be. And it looks like on Excel 365, I don't get that freedom. However, I think I'm going to try to find it anyway. I'm going to close that. This range of cells is still selected. Conditional formatting, let's see. I don't even get the option to, let's see if I get it here. Oh, this is an interesting predicament. I think it's going to be okay for us in this class, but I'm just a little bummed. I don't seem to have the option to create a new rule based on my own formula. That's kind of a bummer. And out of curiosity, let me go to, actually, let me go ahead and do this. Highlight cells rules that are equal to 500. I'll just pick one of these formats. I'll do a red border. All right, that's doing its thing. I'm going to select that again. Let me head over to Manage Rules and see what options. So these are the rules that I have available to me. Manage Rules in my selection. I'm going to go to this rule here. Double click it. No, I can't even. Yeah, it doesn't really give me a lot of great choices there. It's kind of a bummer. In Google Sheets, which is obviously Google's web-based version of a Excel workbook, yeah, you can do that. You can create rules with formula. That's kind of that's a bummer that it doesn't exist in Excel 365, and that's definitely, it's not even an advanced feature. That's a feature that I think even intermediate level people would want to do in Excel. So I'm learning a little bit something about Excel 365 here, and we don't have the same freedom to do conditional formats as we do in the 2019 client version. However, that said, there's still a lot of things you can do with the defaults on here. And they've got other things we can do too. Data bars, those are pretty cool. It's hard to see there because I've got all that other stuff. So let me go to my conditional formats, manage rules, and let me just go through and delete some of these other rules. And I do like this one. It puts a kind of like a bar chart built into the cell right in there. Cool. Speaking of bar charts, I know I said we were about done, but let me just do one more thing. I'm going to create a new sheet, and I'll probably do another video, another skills, because I do want you to be able to make charts and graphs in Excel pretty confidently. But I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. I'm going to rename, and this is going to be a basic pie chart. I'll click OK. Let's zoom in to 200%. And let's make some fake data. This is going to be pretty boring fake data, but in cell A2, I'm going to do north, south, east, and west. I'm pretty confident you couldn't autofill that series. I'm curious now, what if I tried? It gives me a bunch of north. What if I use my control key? Oops, went the wrong way. Control Z to undo. Control key, go down. No, yeah, it's not going to know the north, south, east, west thing, so I'll just... Now let's put some years here. Now when I type years, I'm going to do this. This is going to be kind of weird. I'm going to type a single quote or an apostrophe, and then I'm going to put in 2017 tab, and then I'm going to autofill that over a little bit. Now, why did I put that apostrophe in? You may have noticed something, but notice how my year is aligned to the left side of the cell. Normally, when you type a year in, 4-digit number, it aligns to the right because numbers align to the right. But this time, those numbers are aligning to the left. And notice you can't see that apostrophe anymore. That little apostrophe is a code which tells Excel that I want to treat this value as text. Now, why did I do that? Because these years are not going to be calculated. They represent the years, 2017, 18, 2021, whatever. I'm not going to get the average year or the total year. So I wanted to format them as text because they're going to be part of my pie chart here in a little bit. Now I'm going to put a bunch of random numbers in here. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to select this range of cells, B2 through F5, and then I'm going to type in equals rand between. As soon as I see that it's getting the function that I want, I press my tab key. It finishes the function, gives me the opening parentheses. I'm going to type in 111, comma, 999, closing parentheses, and then I'm going to press Control Enter. So I've got my rand between function. All of my cells are highlighted. Control Enter. Let's try that again. There we go. Control Enter. And now I've got a bunch of random 3-digit numbers in there. Great. Now I'm going to select all of these cells, including that empty cell A1, by the way. A1 all the way down to F5. I'm going to head over to Insert. I'm going to click on the little pie chart icon. Got my basic pie chart right there. That was pretty easy to do. I'll just put that off to the side. Standard chart, nothing too tricky there. This time I'm going to select A1 through B5. I'm only going to make a pie chart for my 2017 data. Insert pie chart. There we go. That one looks pretty good. That's just my 2017 data. Now I'm just going to get my 2021 data. I'm going to select the cells A1 through A5. Then I'm going to, hands not on the mouse, then I'm going to hold down my Control key. And then I'm going to select F1 through F5. Let go of the mouse, let go of the Control key. Insert. I don't have my pie chart option available to me. Let's make sure I didn't screw something up here. Otherwise, this could be a feature that I can't do in Office 365. Try that again. Select there, Control, select there, Insert. Doesn't have it. Let me click on Recommended Charts. Oh, look at this. This is crazy. Charts basically in Excel 365 doesn't support multiple ranges. That's lame. You can do that in Google Sheets too. It's crazy. So basically what I'm trying to do here is very easy to do in Excel 2019 or any old version of installed Excel. It's basically making a chart out of a non-contiguous range of cells. And this is how you would do it. You would select one range, hold down the Control key, select another range, and then just go on making your chart as normal. It's crazy that that feature is not in here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. This video is about half an hour long. So let's make sure we know what I'm expecting on your Excel file. And I'll make sure I show you how to submit that too. So you should have a workbook file that has 4 worksheets. One sheet is just going to have some basic text and number formatting. Anything you want. I just want to see that you can do some basic text and number formatting. Then you're going to have a sheet of relative and absolute. There should be some basic calculations over here where you're showing me a percentage of several numbers, but I'm definitely going to be looking for that multiplication table. Doesn't matter how big it is, but try to go at least 7 by 7. Then there's going to be a worksheet just for some functions, just basic functions like average, median, max, count, count A, min. Definitely get a sum in there, a couple of those. And then there's going to be a worksheet that has pie charts. Give yourself some fake data. Doesn't really matter how much, just enough. And give me a couple of basic pie charts. I didn't spend a lot of time on these charts because we'll practice those later. So 4 worksheets. Now remember, I'm using the online 365, but I want you to turn in an actual Excel file to me. So I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm going to click on my File menu. Now if I go to Save As, perfect, this is exactly what I want. I'm going to go to Save As, and I see there's a download a copy to my local computer. I'm going to download a copy. Now mine is downloading by default somewhere, probably on my desktop. Let me click on my browser option here, and I'm going to open or show in folder. And yeah, that's weird. It looks like it may have gone into my C drive. That's kind of, oh no, it did go into my desktop. Yeah, so so it did go to my desktop, and that's where I usually keep a bunch of files that I'm working on. And it's already got a good file name because I named it previously. So now I've got this file on my desktop. this is the one that I'm going to submit via Blackboard. Okay, so you're not going to send me a link to the online version of the file. You're not going to just share it and things like that. You're going to actually download that file as a local Excel file, and then you're going to submit that one in Blackboard. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for there. Thanks for hanging out with me. Take care.